All right, good evening. My name is Rick Olivares, and welcome to my Infinite playlist where every episode we talk about what's in my record, my compact disc, and cassette collection. For tonight, we'll be talking about some of my new wave records. Not all my new wave records, because there's a lot, maybe not really a lot, but there's still a lot. Just a few of them for now, because I want to talk about them in depth. And all right, we're going to start off with this band. ABC, The Lexicon of Love. This is one of my favorite records from that era. I was immediately drawn to this band because they combined a lot of different genres into their music. There was dance, there was soul, there was funk, um, not to mention a touch of new wave and new romantic new wave, to be honest. And there was something about their songs that really lent themselves well to remixes. And for something like a song, "The Look of Love" Part Four, which was one of the first hits from this album. It was just really not only danceable, but it had a lot of elements. The thing with ABC is they weren't just a band with the basic rhythm section. They had brass, they had strings, and that's what made their music very wonderful because there was a different dimension to their music. And their releases, especially the Lexicon of Love, there was a lot of um, there's a lot of thought into it. There's a certain element of poetry into what Martin Fry and company were doing. And this was just an incredible record. So when when I first heard "The Look of Love" on American Top 40, I thought it was such a great song. And within a couple of weeks, the record was released, at least locally. So I got my copy, and eventually I got this in Japan. Uh, there's really not anything here that I don't like. I like the entire album. In fact, when I think of The Lexicon of Love by ABC, I am reminded in some way of Swing Out Sister and Rick Astley that would come years later. So there was a slickness to the music, there was something modern, taking old stuff, old jazz, old dance music, and with a modern sensibility, at least for the 1980s. And it was very good. My favorite tracks in the album, Poison Arrow, of course. Many Happy Returns. I love the male female vocals in that one. Tears Are Not Enough is pretty cool. The Look of Love, of course, part one and part four. All of My Heart. I think that, again, The Look of Love, the different parts, they were just very difficult to collect back then, at least for someone like me who wasn't rich. So, unlike my other classmates who could afford to get them, the various singles. I had to wait for a few months to a year to be able to get it. Because one, it wasn't easy to get. Number two, there were other things that I was collecting. Eventually, I did get the remixes, but this is one of my favorite from that era. Okay, the second record I want to show you is "Kings of the Wild Frontier" from Adam and the Ants. I can't say that they're massive favorites. I like Adam and the Ants. I love the Burundi style of drumming. I thought that what they brought into drumming just was just so incredible. Um, it was propulsive. It was infectious. It just made you want to dance. And there's something about their music, about pirates, cowboys, and Indians. Inane stuff, really. It was just really fun. It's just the way rock and roll is supposed to be fun. There was nothing depressing about their music. I mean, look at the titles: Dog Eat Dog, Ant Music, Feed Me to the Lions, Los Rancheros. I love Los Rancheros. It had this western feel to it. Ants Invasion, Killer in the Home. It was this was a fun record, and I remember getting Flexi Pop with Adam Ant on the cover, and this music was just incredible. I love the videos; they were crazy and all that. And there, I think that they did some pretty awesome music, And this was the album that came after that, Prince Charming. All right, that's the band right there. Everything's in plastic just to protect it, you know. So, but by far, Kings of the Wild Frontier is my favorite. When I first got this record, it was on cassette, and I played it to death. I think since I kept playing it, it sort of got broken pretty quick. So I picked up the record, and you know, but obviously I got the local copy, and I lost it years ago. I picked this up in Japan. So here, Flock of Seagulls. The they were one of those bands that really pushed the synthesizer, and I love their music. If we could say that the style of drumming in with Adam and the Ants was really incredible. I thought here their use of synth drums was just something else. Their music was in your face. It was infectious. It was pulsating. Maybe pulsating might be the word. And they were just incredible. Look at that. Look at the hair right there. You know, so you could say this is definitely the new wave era. I love this album. Iran obviously was the first single, but my favorite here is Space Age Love Song. And I like that that song was brought to a whole new audience when it was featured in Spider Man, uh, the one with the recent the recent Spider Man film. You know, so that's pretty cool. Then Telecommunications, okay. You know, it's a good record. It's a good record, and I'm very happy with this one. This album, listen, was your second, and look at that hair. Since we've talked about the hair, look at that. Can you believe I actually tried to have my hair styled in that way, but it just doesn't fit me because I look stupid in it. So I kind of preferred my hair more of like crew cut. I did wear my hair a bit long, but eventually I wore it in a crew cut style, because, especially when I discovered ska. So, oh, those records are you're not going to see here, even the Style Council, because that'll be another edition altogether. So, I love A Flock of Seagulls. Now, the next record I want to show you is absolutely one of my favorites from that era. Hunting High and Low, the debut album from Norwegian band Aha. They not only did great videos for songs like Take On Me and Hunting High and Low. Those are some really incredible videos, especially in the advent of MTV. They were massive, they made a splash. But you know, when I think this record is still listenable today. It does not date at all, even in 2020. I love it. Uh, it somewhat nicely fits in with a band like Sigur Rós. But maybe Take On Me, which is more popish or new wave-ish, with songs like Hunting High and Low, Living a Boy's Adventure Tale. Um, and if Here I Stand and Face the Rain. Those ones are the darker songs that are just really beautiful that can stand out today. This is a great record. It is my only record from this band. You know, I know they did other stuff, but you know, I just stuck with this one. Okay, one of my favorite bands from that era is The Alarm. During this big music era where bands like The Alarm, Big Country, U2, even Simple Minds, Cactus World News, they emerged. Uh, these bands like Big Country and The Alarm had a military feel to their music, a martial feel to their music, something that I would not experience until later on with British Sea Power. But this one, look at that. Look at that power. If that isn't fetching, I don't know what is. And look at the back. when you first listen to it, you wonder like, oh, is it pretentious and all that, like 68 Guns and what is 68 Guns really? But I love this band because they were just really passionate songwriters and musicians. They were emo before emo, and they just had some great songs. Like 68 Guns is really awesome. This is a single, and the Declaration. So this one had Marching On. Where Were You Hiding When the Storm Broke? 68 Guns is where the album is from. Blaze of Glory. So these are the big ones from this first album of The Alarm. Definitely one of my favorites. And for a while, they were, as much as I loved U2 back then, um, their music appealed to me a bit more, just a bit more. More albums from The Alarm. I Have the Hurricane. So this one's got Rain in the Summertime. That's one of my favorites. And Rescue Me, Permanence and Change. Three really good songs. And the cool thing about The Alarm is they weren't one hit wonders. They continued to do a lot of great music. I think the new wave era was also characterized by a lot of one hit wonders, but The Alarm definitely wasn't one of them. I remember when this came out, I got it on cassette, Electric Folklore Live. And the songs on it are Rescue Me, Strength, Rain in the Summertime, Spirit of 76, Permanence and Change, Blaze of Glory. It's more of an EP, a live EP. And eventually I just loved it so much that I had to get the record. And this is that record. I managed to preserve it pretty well. I remember there weren't many two live albums coming out then. Under a Blood's Red Sky from U2 did come out, and this one. It was pretty cool because, their music wasn't really the danceable stuff, although there were remixes for their music. And that's what I love them. They were more into album oriented rock, you know. This is their greatest hits, standards. Got this in the US. And just look at that one. What a great cover. So this one is The Road, Unsafe Building, The Stand, 68 Guns, Where Were You Hiding When the Storm Broke, Absolute Reality, Strength, Spirit of 76, Rain in the Summertime, Rescue Me, Soul Me Down the River, A New South Wales, Happy Christmas, War is Over. John Lennon song. And, I remember when this came out, I got into the Waterboys, another big music band, and I totally loved. I love that particular style, this big sound that was cinematic, that was emo before there was emo, and I thought that The Alarm, along with U2, were one of the vanguards of that particular style. Now, earlier we talked about how Adam and the Ants was just a fun band to listen to. If there was any band that was really fun, then it has to be the B-52s. And this is where it started for me, the New Wave era. I remember my dad, who was president of the Philippine Association of the Record Industry, he would bring home Billboard magazine every week. And I would read it. I would devour it from page to page, just reading everything that I could about the music industry all over the world. And I remember one particular issue when you opened the magazine, the frontispiece, which is the first page after the cover, featured an ad about the B-52s and was saying, "Watch out for the B-52s." And I said, "What the hell is this? What's this band?" So um, I was just really trying to, I was just so excited. And then one of my best friends back then, Heck Gardy, came back from summer in the US and he brought back this record and he said, "Hey Rick, you gotta hear this." And so I remember when he played it, I was like, holy cow, look at that. Look at the twanging guitar. It's so um, it's so 50s, it's so 60s, it's so rockabilly and all that, but there is this You know, if you look at the hairdos, the bouffant style, there was a fun element. They were a party band. And the lyrics were absolutely silly, but that's what made it fun. I remember listening to 52 Girls and we were counting the names of the girls. There weren't even 52 names in that. There was like less than 20, if I'm not mistaken. But this was a great record. And just listening to Ricky Wilson's guitar, I mean, wow. I just wanted to play the guitar like Ricky Wilson. I mean, my first guitar god was Eddie Van Halen, even for Jimmy Page or Jimi Hendrix, it was Eddie Van Halen. But I knew I couldn't play the guitar like them, so I wanted to play like Ricky Wilson. It was insane. It is a great record. It's a great party record, and I'm so happy I still have my original copy, and I also have the remastered version of this one, but you're not going to see it in this particular video. So I love the B-52s. And here's a live album that they put out when they were promoting their debut. And check out the songs 52 Girls, 6060, 842. I remember we used to dial that on the phone at number. Obviously, we couldn't get anything. Lava, Private Idaho, Devil in My Car, Dance This Mess Around. You know. So there was stuff even from the second album. And speaking of that, if this was a live recording featuring tracks from the first two records, now this one, Party Mix, because there were a lot of parties back then, dance parties, and mobiles would spin. So what they did for the six tracks on this album was it was kind of mixed. Party Out of Bounds, Private Idaho, Give Me Back in Lava. That's just mess around with 52 Girls, one of my favorites. So, but this live album I only got later on. Back in the 80s, it was the second album. You're not going to see it here because I don't have my original record of that. I do have the remastered version though. But all the remastered stuff goes into another video. Their third proper album, Mesopotamia. A lot of people don't like this, but I love it. I love it because it was produced by Talking Heads' David Byrne. And it was just so weird. It was just so different. It felt like I was listening to a Talking Heads record. But you know, the song Loveland is classic B-52s. And when you think about it, the tracks in this particular album are pretty long. Like Loveland was like, if I'm not mistaken, 5 minutes long. Deep Sleep would really put you to sleep. And Mesopotamia was another slow one, but you know, you gotta love Fred Schneider's quirkiness, and that's what I love about the song and the band. You know, Cake is classic B-52s. So that even throw that beat in the garbage can. You know, that was just funny. This band just knew how to have fun. But David Byrne had his fingerprints all over their music. And I love that this is a bold direction change for the band. Not a lot of people dug it, but I absolutely love this. And speaking of Mesopotamia, guess what? There is a 2006 remix version EP of these songs, you know, of Mesopotamia, Cake, and Loveland. It's a remix. It came out in 2006, so I'm just happy to have this. As a fan of the album, it's pretty cool to have. This is one band that I try to get everything that comes out, including bootlegs. Yes, I have a bootleg of this band, but you'll see that in my video of bootlegs later on. Definitely not a one hit wonder. Whammy was just pretty awesome. You know, Legal Tender, Song for a Future Generation. That's just great stuff. Even Big Bird, you know. So I was in college when this came out. And I remember like I was in sixth grade when I first heard the B-52s, and I was already in college, and they were still putting out great stuff. And when I was in my freshman year, I sort of not like the bands that did a lot of synths. So you could actually put in Gary Newman there, even My Love for a Flock of Seagulls. I stopped with Listen. And I didn't listen to any more of any of its other synth stuff. But that was because when I discovered the Smiths and REM, it's just totally guitar oriented rock. And the B-52s kept that particular style, that fun style of rockabilly with a modern sensibility. But it was the fun. I mean, if there's anything that characterizes the B-52s, it's the word fun. I mean, this is a fun record. Bouncing off the satellites. Okay. I mean, look at that. Girl from Ipanema goes to Greenland. Isn't that funny? So me and my friends would just talk about the titles of the songs, and they were just hilarious. So this is a band that didn't take themselves too seriously, but they knew how to put out good music, good danceable music, right? So, but this wasn't a massive hit, unlike their other albums. But still a pretty good one. Okay, Cosmic Thing. By now, Ricky Wilson was gone from the band, but they did have a very good track here in Rome. Rome is just really fun. I absolutely love that song, Rome. And Love Shack. So there was life after Ricky Wilson as a four-piece band here. So, and it was produced by Nile Rodgers of Chic. So here's a band that knows how to party. Then they get a guy who played during the disco years in Nile Rodgers. It's just a very good record, a good comeback record from this band when they might have ended after the death of Ricky Wilson. Okay, I'm gonna show a few more. Uh, Bananarama, Cruel Summer. Yes, I remember when I got the single because Cruel Summer was so cool, and I still love it to this day. So I do play it once in a while. I think it's just a fun track that not only defines the summer but also the new wave years and the rise of the girl groups of that particular era. And this is Bananarama with the Fun Boy 3. So that's Karen, Shoba, and Sarah with Lynn Valteri and Neville who came from the Specials. When they left the Specials, and they formed the Fun Boy 3. So it was okay. I When Cruel Summer came out, locally they put out a 12-inch single, and I wish I still had that. I don't have it anymore. So, but I did get the 12-inch record and this current version in England. And speaking of England, here is that copy of this, the British copy of Do They Know It's Christmas. I mean, wow, Band Aid, what a great concept. Feed the World, and featured a lot of my favorite artists, a lot of my favorite bands here. U2 was here, Ultravox was in this band, in Band Aid, Duran Duran was in this band, Big Country was here, you know, Spandau Ballet was here, Wham, Paul Weller, of course, was here. So it's a great record. And I have this both on 12-inch and 7-inch. And I love this. I thought that this was one of those big events back in the 80s. It started all these benefit stuff. I mean, it's not like it was the first one. We had the benefit, the concert for Kampuchea, before the concerts for Bangladesh. But this was a time when everything is becoming more global, and coverage, especially from MTV, just made this really massive. And the American artists answered with USA for Africa. But I thought, and I still feel that this is the best of them all. Do they know it's Christmas? Okay. Another of my favorite bands back then was The Bible. Yep. This one's with Graceland. I love bands like this. The Bible, Railway Children. They're just awesome guitar-based bands that kind of atmospheric and really deep vocals. Graceland is just incredible. Yeah, I love this. And then here, another album, Eureka. I remember the song Crystal Palace. And when they would play this on NU 107 back then, the early years of NU 107, I really loved that song, especially when the opening lines, when I first saw you standing there, just like the Beatles. So it was a nod to the Fab Four. And anyone who knows that I'm into music, you know that I'm a massive Beatles fan. And you could say that the Bible had me from that track from Hello, you know. So there. The last band that I'm going to show you for my first video is Big Country. I mentioned them earlier about this big sound and all that. The Crossing. The local version was put out just the color red. Okay. And I don't have my old stuff because a lot of them I lost when I moved abroad and my mom threw them out. And whatever was left, I lost them to Ondoy or a fire, which is really sad because I lost a lot of stuff over the years. I wasn't able to save a lot of records, but there. So I lost my red version, and this one I got in the U.S. and it's a great record. I feel that they were writing about something that was closer to home instead of being a band that would write about worldly things. They're writing things about that were closer to home. And you have to remember when this album came out, it was during the Falklands War. So there's a military feel to this, you know. It was great, when I first heard of Stuart Adams in a Big Country, he was with the Skids. And there was this compilation that came out, The Best of British Punk and New Wave, and the Skids were there. And that was my introduction to Stuart Adamson. When I learned that the Skids broke up and he formed Big Country, I was just really excited because I love the Skids. And Big Country was just totally different. Can you imagine making guitar sound like a bagpipe? That's just so incredible, right? So, and that was there's this compilation that came up, The Best of British Punk. Let me put it down. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, The Crossing. Then their second album was Steel Town. This is a more muscular sounding record produced by Steve Lillywhite, who also did the first album. There's the reason I say it's more muscular. The first one's kind of sparse. This one's a little bit heavier. They were continuing those deep themes: Flame of the West, East of Eden, Steel Town, Where the Roses Sown. Where the Roses Sown obviously is whether it's a reference to World War One or the Falklands War back then. But this is a great record. In many ways, I love this just as much as The Crossing. It's a great record. And then they came out with this EP, Wonderland. I never got this during my school days. I only got it years later. And I got it in Hong Kong in the 90s. And I'm glad that I have it. It's got Wonderland, and, Angle Park, and The Crossing. It's just great. I thought that they were a solid band, Mark Brzezinski on drums, Tony Butler on bass, Bruce Watson on guitar. I thought this was a really tuneful band with a big beat sound, Hold on. My records are falling all over the place. Here. And they followed it up with The Seer. I was in college when this came out, The Seer. And here the music sounded a bit more like The Crossing as opposed to the more muscular sound of Steel Town. Look Away, The Seer, Teacher, Dawn, you know. Kate Bush was here. She guested on this album, and I'm a big Kate Bush fan. So for the longest time, this was my last record of Big Country because um, towards the end of my college days, I was moving into something else. I was not as much as into music. Uh, I began working, so um, I spent more time collecting comic books than records. I did get a few records every now and then. So an album like this, Peace in Her Time, I only got it later on when I started backtracking. Because in the 90s, when I got most of the stuff that I purchased in the 90s with regards to music were CDs. I'd say 95% of whatever I bought were on compact disc. I'd buy the occasional record, but not that much. But this one, Peace in Her Time, I remember they put out the greatest hits. That one I did get the greatest hits, and that forced me to backtrack. It's like, oh, they have this Peace in Her Time. So I got this, and it has King of Emotion with everything that I loved about Big Country, and I sort of backtracked. That's why it's such a tragedy that Stuart Adamson committed suicide. Because I mean, I loved you too. I loved you too, but Big Country, The Alarm, they kind of were just a little bit more after a while. I said earlier that they were uh, the big sound of The Alarm. Maybe because that sound sort of matched you too, but I love them because they were, yes, you two confronted real world issues, definitely, definitely. But you probably know I'm a military buff as well, so that's why The Alarm and Big Country appealed to me. Okay, so here. I'm supposed to end with that one, but I might as well add a few more. Sorry about that. Uh, my first record of Blondie was a 7-inch single of Heart of Glass, and it was backed. The B side was Rifle Range, except that it wasn't Rifle Range. It was another song. I don't even know what that song was, but it said Rifle Range. It was definitely not Blondie's Rifle Range. And we were in Musicland when we played the flip side, and then my best friend Hector said, "Hey, that's not Rifle Range." And I remember uh, one of the supervisors for Octo Arts was there. He was saying, "You mean it's not? No, it's not." So I know that they pulled it out. So I wish I still had my copy of that one because I bought it. And this one I only got much later. I did buy Parallel Lines, but this 12-inch of Heart of Glass I only got much, much later. Much later. Uh, it's made in France, actually. And I don't have any more of my Blondie records from Parallel Lines to Eat to the Beat. I don't have any of them. But I do have this, The Best of Blondie. And wow, they were, look at this, look at the back of it. It's sort of, although these are culled from their various videos, the images that you see, it does remind me of Wings' Greatest in a way, except at Wings, they showed the covers of their 7-inch singles. This one, they called it from their videos. And the reason why I stopped listening to Blondie after a while, because they were dabbling in disco. When they did The Tide is High, I mean, it was okay because I liked reggae music, but they started venturing into more danceable stuff, and I really wasn't into that. Of course, Heart of Glass was danceable, but I kind of preferred songs like Sunday Girl. When I hear Sunday Girl or Picture This, Union City Blue, for some reason I am reminded of early No Doubt. Of course, No Doubt is more ska punk than anything, but during the early years, I felt like I was listening to Blondie. So, you know, so stuff like Hang on the Telephone, I love it. I really love those songs more than the danceable stuff of Blondie. So the danceable stuff is one reason why I ventured away from that band. And the Blue Nile, the one and only record of the Blue Nile that I have. And Stay was the first hit on this album, but you know what really got me here was the song Tinseltown in the Rain. I still play it a lot to this day. Yes, I do. And this is a band that when you play this record, Walk Across the Rooftops, or even all the records for the matter, you sit down and listen, you pay attention. You have to pay attention because they're slow, they're moody, they kind of grow on you. So if you're not paying attention, the songs just blow by you. And you wonder, like, oh, is that good? And I still feel that way. So I listen, I intently listen, because songs like Heat Wave, they're slow. They're slow. So you have to really pay attention and listen to their music. But nevertheless, I have this. Now, this is a DJ's version. It's a promo copy of Heroes from David Bowie. I knew of David Bowie growing up, and he was just this eccentric rocker who did all sorts of music, avant garde, and eventually my first record that I got, and it's here. This was my first real record of David Bowie, Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, because I really couldn't get into Bowie. I mean, I like Heroes, um, I like Major Tom and all that stuff, but I wasn't really into Bowie until this album. And I remember it was featured in Jingle magazine, and I said, okay, let me try it. Because if I remember it correctly, they were saying it's more accessible for those who love New Wave. And I did. And it's not, although, yes, he was venturing into something more commercial at that time, to say. But, you know, it was still weird. Still weird. And my favorite track here is the title track, Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. A couple of albums later, he put out Let's Dance, and that's the other record that I have, Let's Dance. Mm, but and then this one, Heroes, I eventually got later on when there was better appreciation for Bowie. I do have other records from Bowie, but you're gonna see it in my record. You probably saw that in my record store day collection. And speaking of Let's Dance, here, this is what made the rounds during the early years of MTV. China Girl, Let's Dance, and my personal favorite, Modern Love. You know, so I don't. And then I think around that time also he did Under Pressure with Queen, and then he did This Is Not America with Pat and Feeney. So Bowie was at a high profile in the '80s, doing all these great songs. And so, but I think Falcon and the Snowman was my last for Bowie during the time until only the last few years when I reconnected with the spaceman himself. So there. Let's see what else is here. We talked about that big sound of Cactus World News and here. Urban Beaches. I never got this in the 80s because this I didn't know of anyone who had Cactus World News. Maybe there were, but I didn't know anyone. So it's really hard to get this record back in the 80s. And I only got this in the last couple of years. You know, so it was nice to finally have the bridge, Worlds Apart title track, another of those big music bands back then. But they weren't as popular. They didn't gain that popularity that bands like U2, Big Country did, or Simple Minds, or The Alarm. Around the time I was getting to that guitar rock, this band from Liverpool came out, Care, Flaming Sword. And I remember when I first heard of The Cure, it was in a local compilation that was put out, and I still do have that record, actual Philippine pressing. And it came out with the bands like April Showers, and so that was a neat compilation to have. So this one, Flaming Sword, their records are so expensive, especially over here. So I'm happy to have this 12-inch single of Flaming Sword. It's the only one that I have over here. But they have the guitar sound that I really love. Again, if you lump them along with bands like The Bible or Railway Children, so you're gonna love them. And the Chameleons were something different. They had this heavy sound that was like not exactly like Joy Division. So they were influenced by Joy Division, but they took it a step further. There's heavy sound, and in fact, the bands that were like them were Echo and the Bunnymen, and I love both Echo and the Bunnymen and the Chameleons. There's this sense of mystery about the band, this heavy sounding sound that they had, this doom sound and all that. So there. Let's go for a few more stuff here. China Crisis. Again, this was the Hannah Hannah 12-inch single, but I got this not because of that song. I got it because of the live version of African in White. That live version of African in White appeared in that same local compilation that I talked about that featured The Care and April Showers that I do have. You'll see it in one of the videos. But I only got this years later, but I got this in England. For the longest time, my version of it was the local pressing and as an MP3. But I really wanted that because all the different versions, the live versions of African and White, don't compare to this particular live version of Reading University. I don't know why. This is just absolutely great. So, but it was with wishful thinking that I first knew of the band. It was on MTV, and I liked it. Uh, Wishful thinking made you think of all these soundscapes and landscapes because it was such a mellow song. It took you places. But I still wasn't into China Crisis until Flaunting Perfection. And this was such a departure from their new wave sound because Walter Becker of Steely Dan was their producer on this album, and their music changed forever. In fact, whatever sound that they had from there on reflected what the changes that were brought by Walter Becker, the late Walter Becker. And this is one of my favorite records from the 80s, Flaunting Perfection. Such a jazzy sounding album, the highest high, strength of character. You Did Cut Me, which is my favorite here, Black Man Ray. King of the Catholic style, the bigger punch on feeling. Just a really good record. So good, in fact, that I have 3 copies of this record. And here's the follow-up, Diary of a Holocaust. It was produced also by Walter Becker. Not as popular as Flaunting Perfection, but it's still a good record. It's got Singing the Praises of Finer Things, which is my favorite from this album, and Diary of a Hollow Horse, the title track. This next record, when it came out, it blew my mind away. Elvis Costello and the Attractions, Get Happy. Like, the songs were like a minute and a half long. So how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 tracks inside A and 10 tracks inside B. So, this is something. The hit here was Possession, the song Possession, which is from side B. And a lot of people are raving about Elvis Costello, but I wasn't crazy about him. I mean, I thought this album was overrated. It was only later that I started to appreciate it a little bit more. And then he put out Punch the Clock, you know. So I like this album. So this is when I started to reassess how I felt about Elvis Costello and the Attractions. So here, I like this too. Okay, Josie Cotton, obviously from Valley Girl, with Johnny Are You Queer. So this is why I got this record. That's the only reason, because of the Valley Girl connection. Nevertheless, Nappy, it's in my collection. Now this band, The Cult, they brought some rock and roll into that particular era from that British wave. They were just so different when they came out. They were something. This was quite a record, and I loved it. They had hints of psychedelic music, hints of Sabbath and all that. You know, just such a great record. They were just so different. She Sells Sanctuary, when it came out, I was like, "Whoa, what's this? This is totally something else." And they flew against everything that was coming out back then, along with bands like Metallica. Yeah, Metallica came out in the 80s. And then they continued that with Sonic Temple. But this one is Sunken, Firewoman. This is an even great record. Sweet Soul Sister. You know, I love this. I'm a massive fan of the Cult. You know. I have a lot of their stuff also on CD. Look at that. That's so rock and roll. That's so metal, but they're not a metal band. You know. So different from what was coming out back then from the new wave bands. Culture Club. Well, they're okay. I'm not really that big a fan of the band, but okay. So why do I have Culture Club here? Because of Tiny, Clock of the Heart. I absolutely love that song. In fact, even the instrumental version, Romance Beyond the Alphabet, this is 12-inch version. I'm happy to have that only because of that song. I'm not saying that their songs aren't good. They do have good songs, you know, but they're mixing calypso with dance and all that. You know, they're okay, but I can't say they're one of my favorite bands. All right. Speaking of live albums, The Cure. I was first introduced to The Cure with the song Grinding Halt from the Times Square soundtrack. That's the first time I heard The Cure. And this was the second time I heard them, the live album. It was just so different from Grinding Halt. It was darker. It was darker, it was heavier, it was gothic. And this is what I love about, I mean, The Cure, they have their goth side and their sugary new wave side. It's the goth side that I love. The new wave tracks, not so much. You know, Charlotte sometimes, The Hanging Garden, The Walk, The Forest. I love The Forest. This also came out with a companion record, Paris. I was recorded in France, obviously, and that is just a magnificent album. I've never had Paris except on CD. Right? The record is just so expensive to get. And so is this, the original pressing of Standing on the Beach. This is the last record of The Cure that I bought back then. Um, the next time I picked up The Cure, it was with Blood Flowers. And I was in the States back then. So This is a mix between the sugary new wave stuff that I didn't like and the darker stuff. But nevertheless, it's secure, so it's cool to have. Devo, Are We Not Men? This is one of those weird and funny bands also at the time. And when I first got this, it was on 7 inch. Um, it was their version of the Stone Satisfaction. I only got this because of my friend Hector who had this. He said, "Hey, you gotta get this." So I did. They're okay, but I'm not a big fan of them. The Dream Academy, they're okay. This one has got Life in Northern Town. They're more neo folk. The Love Parade, I love the Love Parade, and this is this sort of prepared me for Prefab Sprout. I just love this record. Very atmospheric sound. It's an elegant, classy sound that they play, and close to pop perfection. But if I want to talk about pop perfection, it's probably Prefab Sprout. Duran Duran. Okay. When I first picked up a record of Duran Duran, it was also 7 inch single of Careless Memories. And the B side of that one was Tel Aviv, I remember. And then when I got Planet Earth, that was the B side of Planet Earth was Late Bar. And it was Late Bar that I fell in love with. It reminded me of David Bowie. At the time, a lot of girls were getting into Duran Duran, and I didn't want to get into them because they were like a teeny bopper thing. But Late Bar, which is a B side, was the one that got me into this band. I mean, Girls in Film, Planet Earth, yes, Careless Memories. But, Late Bar is still one of my favorites. But when this album came out, Rio, look at that gorgeous cover. If that cover doesn't get you, I don't know what will. I guess like Late Bar, the song that I really like here was Save a Prayer. You know, I wasn't into Hungry Like the Wolf. Now I like them. Now I do. Um, New Religion, but it's really Save a Prayer and The Chauffeur, the weird ones that I really like, the slower ones. But again, I love this record now. Might as well finish this first track over here. And there's a lot more. Speaking of Echo and the Bunnymen, the first record I got this when I was in first year high school, Crocodiles. Um, I remember reading them on Flexi Pop, and I said, I gotta get me one of these. And I got it in Hong Kong. And this was just so different going up. Going up. The first track of this album is Going Up. And it lifts you up there and then suddenly goes down there, takes you down. But, at the end, Ian McCulloch's whistling and all that. Great stuff. Do It Clean, Villiers Terrace, all that jazz, Happy Death Men. And they were produced by the Chameleons, so you know where they got their sound, right? This is my first record of Echo and the Bunnymen. Look at that cover. I was like, my God, this is so weird, right? What the hell are you doing out there on those streets? And the title's Crocodiles, right? Go figure. Now, when this record came out, Ocean Rain just blew everything out of the water. Silver, Crystal Days, The Killing Moon, Seven Seas, My Kingdom. I love My Kingdom. There's a certain angst to their music. Another band from Liverpool. These guys are just great. Echo and the Bunnymen, one of my favorites from that era. Mm-hmm. Everything But the Girl. My when I first learned of this band, it was from Once More, a 7-inch single, and then I heard them on the Style Council, and this one, When All's Well, Ballad of the Times, such a great song. Kid, Tracy Thorn is such a distinct voice, you know, um, and they were so different from their later style. They got into house and they got into something more jazzy and all that with the language of life. They did something more popish in the vein of the Dream Academy or even Prefab Sprouted Worldwide. And then they got into this house dance style. You know? But this album, Love Not Money, and this follow up later on, Baby the Stars Shine Bright, it had Americana dripping all over their sound, just so different. I love, I absolutely love Sugar Finn. It's one of my favorites. I love it because they had horns. They introduced a lot of horns and brass and stuff like that. Cross My Heart, of course, Cross My Heart. But Sugar Finn is my favorite here. Oh, one of the more popular songs during the time. Feels like heaven. It's okay. But if it Save My Zero. Okay. Whew. Pressed in the Philippines, my Philippine record, Filippo Lippi songs. Wow. This is just something, it's a massive favorite. A lot of people were listening to Filippo Lippi back then. I think The Distance Between Us was the first single year. I could be wrong, but I think it's The Distance Between Us. But this is a record that you like every track. And, this is such a great album that it's why they achieved massive popularity in this side of the world. There's just a lot of great tracks over here. So I'm happy I still have that record. Yep. But I also have the non-Philippine version. As you can see, the local version has some tracks, the singles that are, um, it's over there. What am I doing? Here. Every time I sing it, then the British version doesn't have that, so it's cool to have both versions. So even in the back, it's different. The British copy is cleaner than the local one. Because the local one doesn't have any liner notes. And I think that's what makes the record great, the liner notes. This one was produced by Walter Becker, and so it had a jazzier sound. Angel, Freedom, Don't Take Away the Light, Beauty and Madness. Some People, Crazy Wisdom, It's such a very good album. Very good. So after this, the next one that I got was like their best, and I got it on compact disc. I never got another Filippo Lippi album, but I did get the newer one where they re-recorded everything. But you're not going to see this on this video because these are the stuff that the 80s, the actual 80s stuff. Friends Again, State of Art. I also have the Philippine pressing here. Let me dig it up. It's over here. So they were one of those guitar bands back then that was coming out, and Friends Again had this really nice sound to the music. Found it. The Philippine pressing. And again, it's got the tracks over there. And I didn't like it, to be honest, because it violates the cover art. So if it was a sticker, so look at that one, right? It says UK Invasion. Isn't that annoying? Okay. Uh, locally pressed version of Tenderness from General Public, the guys from the English Beat. Mhm. Okay, I have a few more records to show from this first band. Ah, this is one of my favorites from that decade. Hands down, one of my favorites. Pelican West from Air 100. Um, Calypso, funk. There's a little Jamaican stuff thrown in there. Really good stuff. And they're best because after this, Nick Hayward left the band, and they were never the same back then. So these were actually one of those one-hit wonders, if you want to talk about that. You know, Nobody's Fool, Paint and Paint, the succeeding stuff that came out from Haircut 100 weren't exactly great anymore. But being the completist, I wanted to have it. Full American Pearl Harbor. She was in the band called The Explosions, and I got this. From the old Human League, some of these guys left to form Heaven 17. Danceable stuff, a lot of synth stuff, and I loved it during the early part of the 80s, but once I got into college, I wasn't listening to this stuff. But this guy I like, Billy Idol. I love this stuff, White Wedding, it's so great, And Dancing with Myself, which was their hit with his old band, Generation X. Vital Idol, White Wedding, Dancing with Myself, Fletcher Fantasy, Catch My All, Money, What Call Fantasy. And he's here with Steve Stevens, his awesome guitarist, So yeah, Billy Idol. Great stuff back then. The last few records in my bin, my first bin. Okay, hold on a second. Joe Jackson, Night and Day. I remember when this album Look Sharp came out. It was okay, but the quirkiness didn't really appeal to me. I mean, it was okay, but this one did because he introduced a lot of jazz into his repertoire. And look at that cover, and look at that New York skyline on the cover. Obviously, he was influenced by his stay in the United States, in New York in particular. So there, and he parlayed that into this great record, Body and Soul. I remember when the local version of this came out, I was just reading the liner notes. Look at those liner notes. And like I said, if you're into records, and if you were really into records, you read the liner notes. If you didn't read the liner notes, and I'm sorry, maybe you were just weren't into it. But I love the liner notes. Just reading about it, about sound. This is the first record that I remember then that actively talked about sound and how particular they were about the recording process. And that made a massive impression on me. So I started trying to understand sound, and this is a great album. It's a great jazz record. It feels like there are times I feel like I'm listening to the West Side Story. It's a great record. The big hits here were You Can't Get What You Want Till You Know What You Want. Of course, Be My Number Two. But tracks like Not Here, Not Now, The Verdict is just so majestic. The way it opens the album. And I think this is the first record where I appreciated track listing. Because I remember reading an interview about how they crafted or put together the tracks in order. Start out with Verdict that takes the music from Night and Day further, and it is so great. Then Cha Cha Loco, obviously a cha cha beat. Not Here, Not Now is more a somber piece. Then You Can't Get What You Want Till You Know What You Want. That just really lifts the entire album. And Go For It with Ellen Foley doing backup vocals. Um, it's like a dizzying song. Go for it, things like that. And Side B opens with this great saxophone sax solo, Loisaida, which is the Lower East Side. Loisaida is like the street term for the Lower East Side in New York City. Happy Ending, B-Main number 2, Heart of Ice. I have 3 versions of this. This is the American pressing. I have the Japanese pressing and the British pressing. It's a great, great record. Again, this will go down into one of my favorites from that era. Johnny Hates Jazz. They're not jazz. They're a little more dance oriented, but very popish. Shattered Dreams, Turn Back the Clock. They're okay. Okay. Now, one of those synth guys that came up in high school, Howard Jones. What is Love and stuff like that. New song. It's great. I loved it back then. When I was in grade 6, the Knack. This is one of those that ushered in that new wave era. This record. Man, I couldn't wait to get this when My Sharona hit. Everyone was playing it. Look at that. Doesn't that remind you of the Beatles? There were comparisons to Meet the Beatles with this record, at least the cover. And a lot of the tracks here were hits, And I love this record. There's not a song here in this record that I don't like, But my favorites here would be Otara, She's So Selfish, Good Girls Don't, My Sharona, Heartbeat, which is good for Buddy Holly. Lucinda, That's What the Little Girls Do When Frustrated. Great record. Unfortunately, they weren't able to follow up with another good album. And I guess there was just so much pressure from this great, great record. But man, the Knack, grade 6, blew everything out of the water. I remember we were listening to Kiss, Queen, Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin, and then we got into the B-52s, the Cars, and Devo. And we were laughing at the guys who were listening to Earth, Wind and Fire, Spyro Gyra. They thought they were the cool kids back then. No way they were the cool kids. We were the cool kids. And then when My Sharona hit, those guys into jazz and R&B and disco, they all jumped over to new wave. But you can blame it on the Knack. Here. I had a lot of Human League records back then, but I don't have them now. The one record of the Human League that I have is their Love and Dancing album, which are just really remixes of their tracks. I love it. It's just so different. So different. That's why this is the only one that I have from the Human League. That's Active. One of those Georgia bands, along with REM, that came out then. I remember seeing the video for Every Word Means No, where Mitch Easter was holding up a rabbit, and I thought it was really weird, but I kind of like it. Their drummer, Sarah, is just awfully cute. There she is. So I was into them. Just a few more records before we're done for this first video of records from my new wave years. All right. Just a great Liverpool band from that 80s, and Lotus Eaters, No Sense of Sin. This is put out also locally, but not right away. It didn't come out right away. So I had to get the import. This is the British version that I have. I also have the American version. And this is a record where you like every single track. It's absolutely amazing. Great record. My favorite track is My First Picture of You. So I had to get this too. 12-inch single. And there's another version of that. But this time the A side was It Hurts, and My First Picture of You appears on the B side. So I did get a few of their other stuff on compact disc, but in terms of vinyl, no, this is it for me when it comes to the Lotus Eaters. And there are a few more records I want to show that's going to end this first video. One is Missing Persons. This is their mini LP, 4 songs. Look at that cover. Wow. If Terry Bozzer doesn't grab you with that cover, I don't know what. But okay, this one had Words and Destination Unknown. So I got that. Spring Session in. Wow. Look at that cover. So great. Yeah. So Words and Destination Unknown are also here. Here's another Missing Persons record. Rhyme and Reason. Gail Bozzer is just absolutely gorgeous. If I thought that Debbie Harry was sexy, or even Pat Benatar was sexy, Gail Bozzer is something else. Yeah. My original records from back then. The last record I want to show for you in this video, yes, this is the last one I'll show because this is the last one in that particular bin. The Mission. Yeah, the heavy sound of the Cult. A band like The Mission got that heavy sound and infused this goth feel into the music. And look at that one, look at that cover. Right? In fact, I think they also set the table for bands that came up in the 90s like Kula Shaker. But this is just really a great single, Severina. You know, and later the Sisters of Mercy. But I have their stuff on compact disc, but in terms of vinyl, I got this because of Severina. I think it's a great song, Severina. So great stuff. And just look at that artwork. So again, I thought that it set the table for a band like Kula Shaker. So the new wave years for me were fun, absolutely fun. But I dressed up like a punk and then later like this skinhead. In fact, I have a picture here that I find it difficult to share because I'm so skinny and my shorts are really short. I was wearing a shirt by the Specials then. Because ska when the best of British when Dance Craze, the best of British ska live came out. That was just something because I got into Madness, I got into the Beat Selected Specials. You know, that just changed me and changed me in a way that the Smiths and REM would do later on in college. But I really couldn't dress up like my classmates with their hair all made up with gel and stuff like that. I preferred to come in with a little bit white sidewalls and with a special shirt. And there are times I put on these punk studs that you could buy in Farmers Plaza. So there. But then, when I got to my college days, it's just so totally different. Because a few years later, Guns N' Roses became a hit, and hair metal was a hit. So the music was changing, and new wave was dying. A lot of the bands are changing their sound. So there. So the new wave years. I was in grade 6, grade 7, high school, and college. So a lot of that stuff there happened during those formative years. Who else is on? Hey Sarni, my old crewmate at the McDonald's. Relly San Agustin is watching. No, I'm not using the new cam. I'm not. Um, James T who's in San Francisco is asking. Yes, I do have a View to a Kill, but it's over there with my soundtracks. And Keith Goodman from the Sleeves in Hong Kong is watching. Waiting for this guy to come up with this version of The Clash. I'm excited for that one. Okay, I want to check. Let me. Who else is watching tonight? I have no idea if people are watching, to be honest. Okay, let's see. So we can read. One of my old students, Paolo, is watching. Coach Frank Muescan. Hey, Coach Frank. Another old classmate of mine, Edwin Eulalia. Former office mate of mine, Lawrence Laurel. Attorney Mark Piad is, I think he's in Iloilo right now. Noel Francia, good friend, the owner of that great distro record label, Mutilated Noise. Owen's watching, Owen Fermento. Noel Yusecos, Vinci Montanero, Parokya ni Edgar is watching. One of my colleagues and students, Kevin Estrada is watching. The mom of Clint Escamis, Carmelita Escamis is watching. One of my students from Pampanga, Ronald Bamba is watching. MJ Cruz. Hi, MJ. Oh, Coach Edward Sediego. Coach. One of my students again in Pampanga, Anjanette. Nako, si Idol Nathan Azarcon of River Maya and kapatid. Kapatid, nanonood. Hi, Idol Nathan. A good friend of mine and vinyl enthusiast, Erwin Ursua. Coach Mike Oliver. Coach Ton Brodette, nanonood din. Ako, Eddie C. Nanonood din. Tsaka si Rodrigo Ranices. So, ayan. Well, this is part one of my New Wave collection. I have another bin over there that I'll share with you. So what you get, again, before I end this live session, what you're not seeing here are stuff from the Style Council, the Jam. I pulled them out. So what's in store for the next one? You'll see bands like New Order, Modern English, Ultravox, and Sig Sig, Sputnik, the Smiths, and all that. That's in part two. So we'll do that tomorrow night. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. You all stay safe. And I hope that you had fun watching me talk about my records and what they meant to me at that particular time. Bye, everyone. Good night.